Chapter 91 Transplantation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Because Shinji had already reached out through direct adjacent space, he wasn't surprised when the leader showed up late that night. She turned to Shinji, ready to roll, boss. Let's do it. As he prepped the surgical tools, Shinji glanced at Karen. On the surface, Xianglin appeared calm, but Shinji caught a flicker of fear in her eyes. Once everything was set, Shinji explained, I've run the tests. The surgery risks are manageable. Your cells and tissues are way stronger than I thought. Plus, with the Uzumaki clan's natural vitality, even if we see a major rejection, I'll have time to remove the cells. Got it. Xianglin tried to keep her fear in check. She trusted the leader's skills. The last eye transplant had gone smoothly, so despite her apprehension, she was ready to face this head-on. After telling Xianglin to lie down, Shinji injected the fusion solution. Then, he instructed, look into my eyes. Xianglin obediently gazed at the scarlet kaleidoscope Sharingan visible under Shinji's mask. Instantly, her eyes glazed over, and the kaleidoscope in her eye socket, still active with pupil power, shifted from its normal black to a scarlet hue. 3 Tomo appeared, spinning slowly, before merging into a complex pattern. Phew! Shinji exhaled softly and released the illusion on Karen. Xianglin exclaimed, is that the kaleidoscope Sharingan? Shinji had used illusion to help Xianglin awaken the Sharingan in her eye sockets. His main goal was to stimulate the kaleidoscope Sharingan to release intense Yin release chakra to counteract the excess Yang release chakra from the white Zetsu cells. Even though Xianglin had carried these kaleidoscope Sharingan for some time, this was her first time activating them, so she was instantly stunned by their unparalleled insight. The information on the unique abilities contained within the kaleidoscope Sharingan flooded into her mind. Get used to it first. Shinji held off on the transplant. He needed Xianglin to adjust to the Yin release chakra from the kaleidoscope Sharingan and allow the fusion solution to take effect. Time trickled by. Half an hour later, Shinji announced, surgery's about to start. If you feel like your body's maxing out, immediately tap into the Yin chakra from the kaleidoscope Sharingan. It'll help balance the excess Yang chakra. Xianglin nodded quickly, understood, that the fusion solution had already kicked in. Without hesitation, Shinji seized the window of opportunity and began the cell transplant. Cell transplant surgery wasn't much harder than an eye transplant. Plus, Shinji had spent countless hours practicing in the lab. He knew the drill. In under 10 minutes, he'd completed the transplant, cleaned the wound on her arm, and stitched it up. How do you feel? Shinji asked. Just itchy. She paused, then frowned. My arm's really itchy, like bugs are crawling all over it. That's normal. Shinji remained calm. The worst-case scenario would involve widespread tissue necrosis in the transplant area, or the white Zetsu cells turning rogue, using her chakra to reproduce without end. Next would be a strong rejection reaction, causing redness, swelling, and bleeding in the transplant area. Itchiness and elevated body temperature in the area were fairly typical fusion reactions. This was the best outcome so far. Following Shinji's instructions, Xianglin channeled Yin release chakra from the kaleidoscope Sharingan to neutralize the Yang release chakra in the white Zetsu cells. The results were striking. Not only did Xianglin feel the itchiness in her arm subside, but Shinji noticed something incredible. Xianglin's arm always had a few old and new bite marks. These were from healing others, including one from Shinji himself. But as Xianglin used the Yin chakra to neutralize the Yang chakra, the bite marks vanished before their eyes, leaving her skin as smooth as a baby's. Whoa! Shinji was stunned. Karen's special body type allowed her to tolerate Yang release chakra. That was why the medical ninjutsu of Shinji and Briquette didn't work for Karen's mother, but these scars disappeared almost instantly, implying more than just Yang release chakra at work. It might be the combined effect of high-quality Yin and Yang release chakra. Shinji turned his attention to the half-damaged kaleidoscope Sharingan in Xianglin's eye socket. Her left eye shone with a bewitching red light, clearly energized, and her blind right eye had shifted from pale to containing a hint of black in the pupil. The color was faint, but it was there. It's recovering. Shinji was shaking with excitement. Before the surgery, he was confident that Xianglin's Uzumaki clan's unique traits, the Senju clan's genes in the white Zetsu cells, and the properties of the divine tree would create a miracle. But seeing the miracle unfold, he, the architect of it all, was blown away. So that's why Obito used a kaleidoscope Sharingan after transplanting white Zetsu cells. It's practically an eternal Mangekyo. He realized that white Zetsu was Uchiha Madara's greatest scientific achievement after the Valley's end. Of course, only Uchiha Madara, who combined the elements of the Rinnegan, first Hokage cells, and the demonic statue of the outer path, could create a white Zetsu like this. Even tech-savvy ninja like Orochimaru, Iroha, and Sasori couldn't pull it off. Bringing his thoughts back to the present, Shinji asked while recording the operation, "How do you feel now?" "The arm's not itchy anymore," Xianglin replied. Shinji nodded and continued, "And your eyes?" "Eyes?" Xianglin paused, then focused on her eyes. Whoosh! A red figure burst out of her. "What?" Shinji was caught off guard and quickly cast a genjutsu on Xianglin. Here's the first chapter. Please vote and comment. End of this chapter. Chapter 92 Exaggeration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A red, skeletal arm shot out from Xianglin on the bed, grabbed Shinji, who was standing nearby, and hoisted him into the air. Shinji's face was unreadable behind his mask. The instant he realized something was wrong, he tried to cast an illusion on Xianglin, but the technique failed this time, even after multiple attempts. Xianglin wasn't subdued, she was only stunned for a moment before breaking free. "My lord! What's happening?" Like Shinji, Xianglin lying on the bed looked terrified. She had simply followed Shinji's instructions and focused on the kaleidoscope in her eye socket, somehow activating her pupil technique. Still caught in Xianglin's Susanoo, Shinji didn't struggle. He calmly said, "Don't worry, your pupil power is gone." "Then what do we do?" Xianglin asked, confused. Shinji reassured her, "Too much restless yang release chakra flooded into you at once, triggering the kaleidoscope Sharingan's power. Listen, don't resist my illusion this time. I'll help you remove the pupil technique." "Okay." Xianglin nodded quickly. Shinji focused intently and cast the illusion on Xianglin again. This time, the weakened Xianglin was finally caught. Her eyes glazed over, and the skeletal phantom projecting from her body dissipated. Shinji sighed in relief as he floated gently to the floor. Luckily, Xianglin had suppressed the power surge in time. Otherwise, her place would be a pile of rubble. Even so, Shinji noticed cracks in the roof where Xianglin's Susanoo had touched it. That was close. Both relieved and alarmed, Shinji gave Xianglin a complicated look. Opening the Susanoo with one eye was a feat that even a skilled Uchiha with the kaleidoscope Sharingan would struggle to accomplish, and Xianglin, not even a member of the Uchiha clan, had done it. Even though it was triggered unconsciously, her control suggested that with the right training, activating the Susanoo with one eye wouldn't be difficult for her. What a powerful sage body! Shinji marveled. The fact that Xianglin had subconsciously broken the illusion meant that the pupil power of the half-damaged kaleidoscope in her eye sockets had increased dramatically in that short span. Release. After a moment, Shinji released the illusion on Xianglin. Recovering, Xianglin apologized repeatedly. "My lord, I didn't mean to. I don't know what came over me." Shinji raised a hand to stop her. "Try to deactivate the Sharingan now." He had just released the kaleidoscope state of Xianglin's Sharingan using illusion, so her eye socket should be in the three-tomo state. Xianglin tried, then shook her head. "My lord, I can't deactivate it." Shinji nodded slightly. "Just as I suspected. Those without Uchiha blood can't control the Sharingan in the same way, a limitation also seen in Kakashi, but this wasn't necessarily bad news for Shinji. He still planned to transplant his grandmother Uchihajiri's half-damaged kaleidoscope into Xianglin, letting her sage body repair it. As long as he didn't help Xianglin activate the Sharingan, she wouldn't be able to detect the pupil techniques contained within, preventing her from using Kamui or any potentially restored abilities like Amaterasu. It wasn't that he didn't trust Xianglin, it's just that kaleidoscope pupil techniques contain highly sensitive information that should be kept secret whenever possible. Shinji then activated his own kaleidoscope Sharingan and used illusion to help Xianglin return her eye to the three-tomo state, fully reverting the kaleidoscope to its original form. I've deactivated the Sharingan for you. The pupil power shouldn't go berserk again. Xianglin breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, my lord. Shinji started packing up the surgical instruments, advising, it takes time for the cells to fuse, usually 1 to 3 weeks. Be careful during that time, and try not to get too excited. Yes. Xianglin nodded quickly. Shinji continued, during the fusion period, your chakra will increase rapidly. I can't predict exactly how much, but judging from the current situation, it's going to be very, very exaggerated. Xianglin looked puzzled. Exaggerated? Shinji didn't elaborate, as he couldn't predict the extent of Xianglin's sage body's enhancement. Instead, he said, pay attention to the changes in your eyes, especially your blind right eye. Keep a detailed record of the changes every day. Xianglin assured him, yes, I will record everything carefully. Just take it easy. After one last look at Xianglin, Shinji disappeared from the room. Back in his apartment, Shinji still felt unsettled. The effect of the transplanted cells on Xianglin was too drastic. He believed that after the fusion period, her cell tissue activity would nearly match that of the first Hokage if Xianglin further unlocked the power hidden within her bloodline through would release training. Her cell tissue activity might even surpass the first Hokage's. At that point, Xianglin would be a living power bank and a conscious petri dish. What am I thinking? Shinji shook his head, dismissing the strange thought. He then focused on planning his next move. Xianglin's current yang release chakra already had the potential to slowly restore a blind kaleidoscope. Once the fusion period ended, it would reach a higher level, potentially restoring the kaleidoscope entirely. Once the pair of half-damaged kaleidoscopes were restored, Shinji could transplant his grandmother Uchiha half-damaged kaleidoscopes into Xianglin. When his grandmother's kaleidoscopes were also restored, he could use the Susanoo lamp to fuse the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. While the fusion of the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan previously involved various complications and risks. This successful cell transplantation operation meant that Shinji now simply had to wait for a pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. I wonder if Xianglin can restore a completely lost kaleidoscope. There was a significant difference between a fully lost kaleidoscope and a half-lost one, and Xianglin might not be able to restore a fully lost one. Even so, if Xianglin could restore 2 pairs of half-damaged kaleidoscopes, Shinji, with 4 pairs of kaleidoscopes, could still gather 2 pairs of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Chapter 93 Tomorrow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It hits shelves at noon on Friday, that's tomorrow. This book's been online for over a month now, and it's all thanks to your support. I didn't quite make it to Sanjiang in the end, but I gave it my best shot, so no regrets. I'm committed to writing, so settle in and enjoy the story. We've got a long road ahead, so let's travel it together. Please subscribe tomorrow. It's super important. Author's note, gotta eat to live, folks. If you've got some spare change, throw a reward my way and vote for a monthly ticket. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. End of chapter. Chapter 94 Monsters. Please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A week later, bam. Shinji went flying backwards, landing with a thud. Xianglin was on him in an instant, attacking again. Shinji's eyes narrowed, and he quickly weaved hand signs. Fire style, fireball jutsu, * whoosh, star. A massive fireball erupted from his mouth, radiating intense heat as it hurtled towards the oncoming Xianglin. Using the fireball as cover, he darted away and leaped into the branches of a large tree. * swish, star. His ears twitched. He heard the sound of something slicing through the air behind him, and he instinctively jumped. The instant his feet left the branch, 2 kunai knives, gleaming with a deadly light, embedded themselves where he'd been standing. Close one. Shinji looked down, a shiver running down his spine, but just then, Xianglin appeared out of nowhere, delivering a punch to the airborne Shinji. who had no way to defend himself. Seeing this, Shinji had no choice but to brace himself and take the hit. Bam! Another muffled impact, and Shinji, unable to absorb the force, was sent crashing into a tree before finally regaining his balance. Xianglin landed gracefully on the ground and eagerly asked Shinji, "So? Did I improve this time?" Shinji leaned against the tree trunk for support. The impact reverberated through the tree, causing the leaves to rustle and swirl down from the branches. Shinji didn't know what to say. Xianglin's progress was undeniable, plain as day. The most obvious change was her speed and strength. Considering Xianglin was already a top-notch sensor ninja, this increase in speed and strength, combined with her already sharp perception, was going to make her combat ability skyrocket. His arm was throbbing from just one punch, and his head was still ringing. What kind of monster did I create? Shinji thought, alarmed. And this was before Xianglin even activated her wood release. That's right, after absorbing the white blood cells, Keirin, like Madara, Obito, and Danzo, had gained the ability to use wood release directly. But based on Shinji's analysis in the lab, this type of wood release, triggered by first Hokage cells or white cells, wasn't true mastery of the technique. It was more of a shortcut. The advantage was that it bypassed the need to master the complex fusion of water and earth chakra. The downside was that strong emotions or a chakra imbalance could cause the first Hokage cells or white cells to go haywire, resulting in uncontrolled bursts of wood release. This was why Shinji had always insisted that Xianglin learn to master wood release through natural chakra fusion. Because that was the only way to truly understand it. In Shinji's mind, none of the ninjas who had transplanted first Hokage cells or white cells had achieved true cellular fusion. Danzo was the worst. He needed a ton of Sharingan transplants just to barely keep the yin and yang chakra in his body in check. Madara and Obito were further along, but still hadn't achieved complete fusion, with obvious signs of transplantation on their bodies. Yamato had fewer visible traces of transplantation, but even his fusion wasn't complete. He had rejected most of the first Hokage cells during the transplantation, and his body had only accepted a small amount. So, while his condition was stable, his potential was limited. Xianglin's current state was similar to Madara and Obito. There was still a wrinkled scar on the transplanted area of her arm, no matter how much she tried to get rid of it. So, Xianglin wasn't yet the ultimate immortal body that Shinji envisioned. Only when Xianglin had fully assimilated the white blood cells, all the transplantation scars had disappeared, and her wood release was completely under control, would she have reached Shinji's ideal state. Of course, Xianglin was already a force to be reckoned with. The ultimate immortal body was beyond his imagination. Just then, Bai emerged from the woods. Good reflexes, Shinji. You dodged my sneak attack back there. Shinji was speechless. Couldn't he at least try to make me feel better? He thought if he didn't use the Mangekyo Sharingan, he wouldn't be able to hold his own against these two monsters, Bai and Xianglin. So, everyone else saw Shinji, the genius of the ninja school, playing around with the two underachievers, Bai and Xianglin. But the reality was that under normal circumstances, Shinji's combat power ranked second among the three, and it was likely that he'd be in third place soon. Let's go, time for school. Shinji waved his hand and started walking towards the ninja academy. Bai and Xianglin hurried after him. Over time, the three had become close. They not only trained together after school, but also met up early in the morning for practice duels, essentially becoming their own little clique. Of course, this was all part of Shinji's plan, because he needed to constantly monitor the condition of the damaged Mangekyo Sharingan in Xianglin's eye socket. Judging by the fight, Xianglin's blind right eye was already regaining some ability to perceive light. He'd attacked her from her right side several times, but she'd blocked him with her heightened senses, so he planned to sneak into Xianglin's room again tonight to be sure. If the blind Mangekyo Sharingan really was regaining its sight, then he could transplant his grandmother Uchiha Kageme's damaged Mangekyo Sharingan to Xianglin. If everything went according to plan, in another week he'd be able to fuse his own eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. At school, Irika announced that final exams would be held in 3 days. This year, to encourage teamwork, the Ninja Academy had decided to conduct the final exams in teams of 3. The classroom buzzed with excitement as the students discussed who they would team up with. Tian pulled Niji over and said to Shinji, "Shinji, let's team up. I asked Mr. Irika, and we'll be competing against other classes. The three of us can win this thing together. Niji frowned. Kimimaro will be a tough opponent. Shinji was about to answer when he noticed Kaoru sitting alone in the front row, sneaking glances at him. When he caught her eye, she quickly looked away. Clearly, no one in the class wanted to team up with the lonely Xianglin, and she didn't know who to team up with, so she was getting anxious. Shinji smiled and said to Tian and Niji, "Sorry, I already have a team." Tian asked curiously, "Who did you team up with?" Shinji pointed to Bai and Xianglin. "The three of us made plans this morning." Shiro, who was sitting in the front row, looked back at Shinji, surprised, and Xianglin, who had been listening in, breathed a sigh of relief, a happy expression spreading across her face. Chapter 95 Oil Bottles, please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tian was a little bummed. "Shinji, you sure you don't want to reconsider? If you and Niji split up, our chances of winning take a major hit." Niji looked at Shinji too, but kept quiet. He was hungry for a win, but didn't want to rely entirely on others. He'd be happy to team up with Shinji, but wouldn't force it. Shinji shook his head. "Sorry, we've already got a team. You'll have to find someone else." "Alright then." Tian and Niji left, looking disappointed. As soon as they were gone, Kaorin ran up to Shinji, looking pathetic. "Shinji, thanks for letting me be on your team," Shinji said flatly, "just try not to screw things up." Kaorin nodded eagerly. "I'll work hard," Bai grinned. "Awesome, the three of us can take the exam together." Shinji had felt a twinge of guilt for Kaorin, who couldn't find a team, but he was mostly worried about keeping everyone in check. What if Kaorin accidentally killed someone during the exam? Her chakra levels were improving at a scary rate. Now he was starting to panic, wondering if he'd made a mistake. This team wasn't about protecting Bai and Kaorin, but about reining in these two monsters. Maybe it was fate, but Tian and Niji ended up choosing Lee, the class underdog. Probably Tian took pity on Lee because nobody else wanted him. Anyway, she figured that with Niji on the team, it wouldn't matter if Lee was a liability. After class that morning, the newly formed teams headed to the playground to practice their teamwork. Shinji led Bai and Kaorin to the playground too. Sasuke spotted Shinji and hurried over, frowning. "Shinji, why are you still hanging out with these two? Don't you know there's a class competition coming up?" He was obviously talking about Bai and Kaorin. Bai didn't react, but Kaorin bristled at Sasuke's comment. Shinji glanced at Naruto and Sakura, who were trailing Sasuke. "Your teammates aren't exactly top-notch either." "Hey, who you calling names?" Naruto flared up, rolling up his sleeves and took a step forward, ready to argue with Shinji. Sasuke held up a hand to stop him. "Don't be an idiot. You can't beat him. I'm the only one who can win." Sakura stepped in to calm Naruto down too. Just then, someone shouted from a distance, "Shinji, over here." Everyone turned to see Cheyenne, holding Kimuro by the arm and dragging along another girl Shinji didn't recognize. Seeing Kimuro, Sasuke's face darkened. He and Kimuro had a standing match once a week, and even though Sasuke had improved, he still couldn't beat Kimuro. He considered Kimuro his arch-rival. Reaching Shinji, Cheyenne greeted him warmly. "Shinji, have you been avoiding me lately?" "Why would I avoid you?" Shinji paused. "Wait, why are you even at the Ninja Academy?" "Guess." Cheyenne grinned smugly. Naruto blurted out, "Aren't you the new transfer student in our class?" Shinji was stunned. "You're actually joining the Ninja Academy?" Cheyenne smacked Naruto on the head, then put her hands on her hips. "That's right. Cheyenne, am a ninja now." Cheyenne had wanted to be in Shinji's class, but the third Hokage had put her in Sasuke and Naruto's class, which she was not happy about. Shinji looked at Kimuro, who Cheyenne was dragging with zero expression on his face. "Forming a team?" Cheyenne nodded enthusiastically. "Yep. They looked so pathetic, I had to take them in." The other girl spoke up. "Isn't it because nobody wanted either of us, so the teacher stuck Kimuro with us?" Cheyenne was annoyed that her cover had been blown. "Yakumo Kurama," Yakumo Kurama ignored Cheyenne and bowed to everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Yakumo Kurama. I don't come to the academy much because of my health. Nice to meet you. Bai and Karen quickly returned the bow and introduced themselves. Just then, Niji, Tian, and Lee walked over, after learning that Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura were a team, and Kimuro had teamed up with Cheyenne and Yakumo Kurama. Tian said, "This is interesting. The four prodigies are split into 4 teams. Should be a pretty good competition to see who can win." Hearing that, Sasuke scanned the group and realized it was true. His eyes lit up with competitive spirit. Everyone stuck with a couple of dead weights. Should be fair. Agreed. Niji nodded slightly. Lee stepped forward and said to Naruto, even if we are dead weights, we'll give it our all. Naruto protested, "I'm not a dead weight." Cheyenne raised her hand in protest too. "Me neither." Yakumo Kurama said flatly, "Yes, you are." Cheyenne was furious. "You are." Kurama Yakumo remained indifferent. "Yes, we all are." Amidst the friendly rivalry, the 4 groups went their separate ways, feeling the pressure from Sasuke, Niji, and Kimuro. Karen reassured Shinji again. "Shinji, I won't let you down." Shinji glanced at Karen and thought, "Just don't kill anyone." In the Hokage's office, the 3rd Hokage's eyes swept across Kakashi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Aoba Yamashiro. Recently, ninja villages have been reporting mysterious disappearances, including many elite-level ninja. Kakashi's heart skipped a beat, thinking about what had happened on Kikyo Mountain. Kurenai Yuhi asked, "Lord Hokage, do you have any leads?" The 3rd Hokage took a puff from his pipe. "Rumor has it that these disappearances are connected to an organization called Akatsuki. The 3 of you will form a temporary team, with Kakashi as the captain, to investigate these disappearances." "Yes." Kakashi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Aoba Yamashiro replied. The 3rd Hokage continued, "Kakashi, stay. The others can leave." Kurenai Yuhi and Aoba Yamashiro left the office. Kakashi knew the 3rd Hokage had some secrets to discuss. "Lord Hokage, any special instructions for this mission?" The 3rd Hokage paused. "We have a mole inside Akatsuki. You'll need to meet with him in secret." "Who is it?" Kakashi asked. The 3rd Hokage whispered a name. "It's him." Kakashi looked surprised. Chapter 96 Trap. Please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Night, donning his red cloud cloak and mask, Shinji slipped into Karen's room again. Xianglin, facing Shinji in his Akatsuki leader disguise, remained a bit wary. "My lord." Shinji nodded and immediately examined the transplanted area on Karen's arm. It was still wrinkled, just like before, so, he shifted his focus to Xianglin's eyes. "How's the right eye doing?" Xianglin handed Shinji her notebook of observations. "Lately, it swells occasionally, and sometimes it feels like it's twitching in the socket, almost like a heartbeat." Xianglin nodded eagerly. "Yes. That's the eye developing." Shinji explained, then asked, "Can you see anything yet?" "I can barely make out some light and shadow," Xianglin replied. Shinji's face brightened behind the mask. He flipped through Xianglin's notes, combining her daily records with her latest report. Shinji grew increasingly confident that her blind right eye was recovering. The recovery rate seemed to be accelerating in sync with her cell fusion. He couldn't pinpoint the exact timeline, but it wouldn't be long. Shinji turned his attention to her other eye. "What about the left eye?" "The left eye sometimes pulsates with the right." Xianglin paused, then quickly added, "But my eyesight's been getting better and better. I can see things clearly from dozens of yards away now." Perhaps due to childhood malnutrition, Xianglin's natural eyesight wasn't great. She'd worn glasses for years, so, after the Sharingan transplant, she was especially sensitive to the improvement, feeling like the world looked completely different. "Even the pupil power in the left eye is increasing." Shinji mused. He understood, the amount of pupil power a Sharingan holds directly affects vision. When the power's depleted, vision blurs. Shinji had been through that himself, so he knew that for Sharingan users, improved vision almost always meant increased pupil power. Closing Xianlin's notebook, Shinji gave one final reminder. Keep channeling yang release chakra into the right eye, and don't slack on your wood release training. Xianlin hesitated. Seeing her expression, Shinji pressed on. Only by mastering wood release through property fusion, and channeling yang release chakra infused with the sacred tree's traits, can you fully integrate those implanted cells. That will enhance your sage body to the max. Xianlin finally spoke up. If that happens, can I help my mother heal? Shinji gave a slight nod. At that point, your sage body will far surpass hers. Replenishing her lost vitality will be easy. Xianlin's eyes lit up. Shinji said nothing more, turning to leave. Warning, dimensional breach detected. Countdown, 0. Prepare for imminent invasion. Suddenly, that familiar ping sounded in his head. Hearing the long-absent warning, his eyes narrowed. The countdowns hit 0 again. Based on past experience, Shinji knew that a 0 countdown meant the enemy had been in the ninja world for a while, masked from his detection by the lights system. In other words, the other party had been operating without detection, making it difficult to determine their intentions. Could this be a trap? Land of Fire, Green Pine Town, Loquat Juzo, strolling through the crowded night market, commented, I didn't expect a town this small to have such a lively night market. Gotta love the Land of Fire. Itachi suddenly stopped, staring at a stall across the street. Juzo followed his gaze. Meatball stand. Itachi, you like sweets? Those'll rot your teeth. Let's take a break inside, Itachi said. Juzo grinned. Alright, I'm game. They headed into the meatball shop and ordered a skewer of meatballs and a cup of Lusong Town's famous alpine green tea. Chewing on a meatball, Juzo said, Itachi, I never pegged you as the meatball type. Don't you like them? Too greasy. Juzo set down his skewer and glanced at the night market outside. That crew pretending to be us has probably been operating around here. He and Itachi weren't here for the night market. Akatsuki was still in the strengthening phase. While they accepted commissions, they avoided provoking the 5 great nations. Nagato's plan called for 6 or 7 more years of building power. He also needed time to prepare himself to unleash a revolution upon the ninja world at full strength. Even though it had been over a decade since his transplant, Nagato was still learning how to fully control his Rinnegan. It was a huge struggle, and it took someone from the Uzumaki clan with his special chakra to even survive the transplant, much less use it. Even for Nagato, fully mastering the Rinnegan was extremely difficult. For a long time, he was unable to tap into its true power. As a result, he had to watch his best friend die, forced to his end by Hanzo and Danzo. While Akatsuki was secretly developing, some imposter group had emerged, attacking ninja from the 5 great nations under the Akatsuki name. Nagato was furious. Anyone interfering with his plan had to be eliminated. He'd immediately sent Itachi and Juzo to investigate. Itachi took a thoughtful sip of tea. Unlike the brash and straightforward Juzo, Itachi still had people he cared about. He appeared calm, but he was actually extremely worried. He couldn't let the village think he'd completely betrayed them. If they did, he couldn't even imagine how his younger brother would be treated. Huh? Juzo suddenly stood up. Itachi snapped to attention and scanned the night market. A figure wearing a red cloud cloak was weaving through the crowd. His eyes narrowed, and his expression changed. They were the only Akatsuki members in the area. Seeing the familiar cloak, they knew instantly it was one of the imposters who were attacking the 5 great nations. Juzo grinned. Time to do some work. Itachi carefully set down his teacup and nodded. Chapter 97 The Confrontation on the Long Street. Please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Across the night market, Kakashi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Aoba Yamashiro, disguised in burqas, weaved through the crowds. Konoha's intelligence had pinpointed members of the Akatsuki organization, responsible for recent attacks on Konoha ninja. To this small town, initially, only Genin and Chunin were targeted. The village dispatched a team led by a special jonin to investigate. Unexpectedly, That team also vanished without a trace. This immediately raised red flags. A special jonin from any of the 5 great villages was a capable ninja. For a team led by one to disappear completely suggested a far more serious threat than they'd imagined, hence, Kakashi was sent. Kurenai Yuhi murmured, "Who is this Akatsuki?" "Attacking Konoha ninja in the land of fire," Yamashiro Aoba added, "they're out of control." Attacking and killing Konoha ninja in the land of fire, the leading village, was a bold provocation. It hadn't happened in years. Kakashi remained silent. Unlike Uihong and Yamashiro Aoba, he had received some information about Akatsuki from the third Hokage. He knew they were more than just a typical rogue ninja group. Their members were mostly S-rank criminals from various villages, and even Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin, had been a member. His mission from the third Hokage wasn't just investigating the disappearances, but to secretly contact the village's informant within Akatsuki and uncover the organization's true agenda. Lost in thought, Kakashi suddenly stopped, frowning. Uihong and Yamashiro Aoba followed suit. On high alert, the white-haired youth in an Akatsuki cloak stood silently amidst the crowd. His smile was unsettling, a grin that conveyed no warmth. His eyes were striking, with colorful pupils bearing the characters Upper Heaven and Wu. Kurenai Yuhi whispered to Kakashi, "Is that him?" Kakashi didn't answer. He lifted his forehead protector, revealing the Sharingan in his left eye. The three-tomo Sharingan could perceive chakra flow. After careful observation, Kakashi's expression turned grim. While the Sharingan didn't have the Byakugan's all-seeing abilities, the chakra flowing around the youth's body showed he was far stronger than Kakashi. Known as the copy ninja, Kakashi wasn't famed for his chakra reserves, but they were still at Jonin level. This guy was no joke, Aoba Yamashiro asked. "Should we engage?" Uihong scanned the crowd. "Too many civilians. Ninjutsu risks collateral damage. I'll use genjutsu to subdue him, then take him somewhere isolated to extract information." Kakashi hesitated. He expected to meet their contact, not a random Akatsuki member. Suddenly, his gaze sharpened. He spotted Itachi and Kisame, cloaked and wearing conical hats, in the distance. Simultaneously, Itachi and Kisame noticed Kakashi's group, and the white-haired youth in the Akatsuki cloak standing between them. Kisame gripped the handle of his Samahata, growling, "That eye-tattooed punk again." Itachi closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, revealing Crimson Sharingan. He didn't act, sensing something off. 3 factions stood poised on the night market street, separated by a river of oblivious shoppers and shouting vendors. The white-haired youth suddenly covered his mouth with a golden fan, grinning at the rooftops. Itachi and Kakashi followed his gaze. 3 figures in Akatsuki cloaks and masks had materialized on a nearby roof. The leader stood quietly, looking down at the white-haired youth. His expression was hidden by the mask, but Itachi, Kakashi and others sensed cold indifference. The others stood behind him. Despite the similar attire, the hierarchy was obvious. Aoba Yamashiro said, 3 more. Kurenai Yuhi frowned. "If a fight breaks out, innocent people will get hurt." Despite the rising odds, Uihong and Yamashiro Aoba weren't backing down. They were capable of sweeping rogue ninja teams under normal conditions. With Kakashi, their chances were good. Kakashi shook his head. "Hold your fire." He was confused. 3 groups, all wearing Akatsuki gear, had appeared, and they clearly weren't allies. He needed to connect with his contact and find out what was going on with Akatsuki. Itachi and Kisame were equally puzzled. Kisame eyed the roof. "Itachi, who are those guys?" Itachi shook his head. After spotting the white-haired youth, they were sure he was the culprit behind the recent attacks by a fake Akatsuki group. They were about to strike when these newcomers appeared. Itachi sensed hostility between the groups. Kisame slammed Samahata into the ground. "Does it matter if they're rivals? Anyone impersonating Akatsuki pays the price." The tension thickened. The white-haired youth tore off his cloak, bowed slightly to the rooftop figures, and announced, "Tonma, reporting for duty." He opened the golden fan and waved it gently. Rumble, star. Amidst deafening noise and freezing fog, a massive, 20-meter-high ice crystal bodhisattva rose from the ground. Chapter 98. Is he crazy? Please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the 60-foot ice crystal bodhisattva rose, the ground trembled. "Ah!" Screams erupted in the night market, the crowd scattered, fleeing in panic, exclamations, cries, and warnings filled the air. Around the folded hand bodhisattva, lotus flowers of ice bloomed, they opened rapidly, and in moments, the entire market was engulfed in cold mist. Townspeople nearest to the bodhisattva were instantly frozen into ice sculptures, then shattered into icy shards on the ground. Even those farther away gasped, clutching their chests, as they inhaled the frigid air, collapsing to the ground. Ice release. Itachi, Juzo, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Aoba were all stunned after Kirigakure wiped out the Yuki clan. Ninja with the ice release Kekkei Genkai were rare. The sudden appearance of one was shocking enough, but what shocked everyone even more was that this white-haired kid hadn't even used hand seals to create such a terrifying ice release. The ice crystal bodhisattva was over 60 feet tall, like a 6 or 7-story building. Even if the Yuki clan still existed, no one had ever heard of ice release on this scale. Seeing the cold mist spreading, Itachi and Juzo immediately retreated. The enemy was stronger than they'd anticipated. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Aoba also fell back. Kakashi had some intel from the third Hokage and knew Akatsuki wasn't just some ordinary group of rogue ninja, but Kurenai and Aoba were truly surprised. Only an exceptional ninja could pull off such an ice release, and they were astonished that Akatsuki had someone this powerful hidden amongst their ranks. While everyone watched the white-haired ice release user, they retreated quickly. On the rooftop, the leader merely raised a hand. An Akatsuki member in the signature red cloud cloak and mask leaped towards the towering ice crystal bodhisattva. Is he crazy? Itachi, Juzo, and Kakashi all thought the same thing. Against this kind of ice release, a head-on attack was suicide. Even Kage-level ninja from other villages would test the waters first, searching for an opening. He's dead, Juzo stated flatly. As a former Kirigakure ninja, he understood ice release. It wasn't just a fancy version of water release. To use ice release of this magnitude without hand seals or a water source, the user had to be at least an elite jonin. Itachi also looked puzzled. A ninja this strong should be well known, but he'd never heard of this Tomo character before. Still, he agreed with Juzo's assessment. Even he, with his Sharingan, would likely have to use the Mangekyo Sharingan to control the situation. As Kakashi retreated, he told Kurenai and Aoba, "Signal 4. Back up, now." Kurenai didn't hesitate, firing a signal flare into the night sky. They were in the land of fire, after all, and there were likely Konoha ninja on missions nearby. Aoba summoned a crow to relay the news to the village. From their perspective, the 3 Akatsuki members on the roof were no match for Tomo. They needed to be prepared to deal with Tomo and clean up the mess. But suddenly, everyone froze. Shock etched on their faces. The Akatsuki member they believed was about to die jumped towards the ice crystal bodhisattva, and a red phantom erupted from his body. Almost instantly, the red phantom solidified into a giant red skeleton. The towering skeleton reeled back a fist and launched it towards the 60-foot ice crystal bodhisattva. As the red skeleton's fist hurtled forward, its bones morphed into muscle, then skin, and finally, a suit of heavy armor. Boom! The punch landed with an earth-shattering roar that echoed throughout Green Pine Town. The 60-foot ice crystal bodhisattva staggered under the force of the blow, teetering. Cracks spiderwebbed across its face where the fist had struck, and shards of ice flew everywhere. What? Juzo was speechless, forgetting to retreat. Even Itachi, usually unreadable, was visibly shocked and confused, muttering, "Susanoo. How is that possible?" Susanoo was a technique unique to those who awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi believed that he and the man who claimed to be Uchiha Madara were the only ones in the world capable of using it. He couldn't believe that a masked Akatsuki grunt could unleash Susanoo. And, Itachi's eyes narrowed, his suspicion growing. He knew the different stages of Susanoo, what each meant, and how much chakra each would cost. This guy had jumped straight to the strongest form, the armored half-body Susanoo. That meant the guy's chakra reserves were massive. After the initial shock, Itachi and Kakashi simultaneously shifted their gaze from the battlefield to the figure standing silently on the rooftop. "Who is he?" that the question echoed in both their minds: what kind of person could command an Uchiha strong enough to use the Mangekyo Sharingan in Susanoo? Itachi and Kakashi found themselves deeply curious about the figure overseeing the fight. Juzo, recovering his composure, asked, "Itachi, are those masked guys really members of our Akatsuki? They seem to be fighting the guy with the weird eyes. Maybe they're other hidden members of the organization." Itachi was unsure himself. With this kind of power, it was hard to believe they were fakes. Chapter 99 Raiders, please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Amid the chaos of explosions, the Red Susanoo and the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva continued their fierce battle in the small town. Because these two giants were so powerful, every move they made caused massive destruction. In a matter of moments, the town's main street was reduced to rubble. The whole town erupted in chaos. With roars, shouts, and cries filling the air, the residents fled with their families. Whoosh star. Suddenly, a group of figures moved against the tide, landing beside Kakashi and his team. Leading them was Asuma, who had just returned to the village. He stared up at the two behemoths locked in combat, his expression incredulous. What the heck is going on? That even with his experience as one of the 12 guardian ninja, the scene before him stunned him. The Ice Crystal Bodhisattva, over 60 feet tall and wreathed in mist, and the equally massive, red, armored Susanoo. He'd never seen anything like them in his ninja career. Kurenai glanced at Asuma. "What are you doing here?" Asuma replied, "I was nearby and saw your flare." Truthfully, even without the signal flare, Asuma and the others would have rushed over to investigate. The battle raging in the town was impossible to miss, even from kilometers away. Kakashi also glanced at Asuma's team, his expression grim. Besides Asuma, a former guardian ninja, the other three were just ordinary chunin. They were no match for these Akatsuki guys. Asuma pressed, "Seriously, what's going on?" Kurenai explained, "We're investigating the recent ninja disappearances. The clues point to an organization called Akatsuki. We tracked them to this town and found these Akatsuki members." Asuma had heard about the missing ninjas. "Which side is Akatsuki?" Kurenai hesitated. "All of them." Asuma was stunned. Aoba Yamashiro chimed in, pointing toward Itachi and Kisame standing down the street. "Those three over there are wearing Akatsuki cloaks too. That's Itachi Uchiha." Asuma's face tightened, distracted by the two giant fighters, and obscured by flying ice and cold mist. Asuma hadn't noticed Itachi and Kisame down the street at first. Aoba Yamashiro nodded. "Yep. Next to Itachi is Kisame Hashigaki, the former swordsman of the mist, a missing nin from Kirigakure." Asuma's face fell. Itachi, Konoha's wanted criminal who wiped out the Uchiha clan, and Kisame, Kirigakure's wanted criminal who defected from the 7 ninja swordsmen. Either one of them was a serious threat. Combined with the two powerhouses in the middle of their earth-shattering battle, Asuma realized that this Akatsuki organization was terrifyingly powerful. He turned to Kakashi. "Kakashi, what do we do?" Kakashi shook his head slightly. They couldn't possibly intervene in a battle of this magnitude. Even though he'd witnessed the whole thing, he was still struggling to understand the situation, including Itachi and Kisame in the distance. 6 Akatsuki members had gathered in the town tonight, but clearly, they weren't all on the same side. Judging by Itachi and Kisame's refusal to join the fight, they seemed to be divided into 3 separate factions. Is there infighting within Akatsuki? Or is something else going on? With that thought in mind, Kakashi looked at Itachi Uchiha in the distance. He suspected that only Itachi could explain all the mysteries. However, Itachi himself was grappling with just as many questions. He watched the Red Susanoo battling the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva, a look of surprise and disbelief on his face. And just as everyone's attention was riveted to the ongoing fight, swish, a figure suddenly lunged at the masked Akatsuki member standing quietly on the rooftop, moving with incredible speed. The attack was completely unexpected. Even Itachi and Kakashi, who were on high alert, were caught off guard for a moment. However, the masked Akatsuki member standing on the roof didn't flinch. as if the impending attack didn't exist, and just as everyone thought he was about to be knocked down, another masked Akatsuki member suddenly appeared from behind and intercepted the attacker. Bang, star, with a muffled thud, the two figures bounced away from each other. Only then did everyone realize that the attacker, like the white-haired kid who called himself Doma, also had words engraved in his eyes. This time, the characters read Upper Moon and 3 on the left and right pupils, but in the brief exchange, the attacker had the upper hand, pushing the masked Akatsuki member back further and forcing him to brace himself on landing. Now, the attacker leaped nimbly onto a rooftop across the street. Striking a fighting stance, he announced, Upper Moon 3, Akaza, on the roof. The masked leader of the Akatsuki group just glanced at Akaza and then remained silent. He stood there, still, unmoving, as if everything was under his control. Faced with such contempt, Akaza seemed annoyed. He stomped his foot, shattering the roof with a bang, and propelled himself forward like an arrow, yelling, Destructive kill, compass needle. Almost simultaneously, the masked Akatsuki member who had just fought Akaza quickly formed hand signs. Ice release, demonic ice mirrors. Instantly, on the long street, amidst flying ice shards and cold mist, ice mirrors materialized out of thin air, forming a crystal-clear ice dome, trapping the entire Akaza with the inscribed Land of the Wind in its eyes. Afterwards, the Akatsuki member who used the ice release walked slowly towards the ice mirror, and to everyone's astonishment, he merged into it. Another ice release user. Aoba Yamashiro was speechless. Asuma and Kurenai exchanged glances. Kakashi's expression darkened. Down the street, Kisame was a little bewildered. Damn, where did all these guys come from? Here's the first one. Please vote and leave comments. End of this chapter. Chapter 100 Woman. Please subscribe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the frost-covered, misty street, two intense battles erupted simultaneously. One was a clash between giants, while the other featured a massive ice dome formed by inverted ice mirrors above the street. The fighting styles were drastically different, yet equally terrifying. By now, nearly all the town's residents had been evacuated. Only Kakashi and Asuma of Konoha, along with Itachi and Kisame Hashigaki, the core members of Akatsuki, remained nearby. Boom. The earth shook as the two behemoths engaged in a primal, brute force brawl. Even their most basic physical attacks possessed immense power due to their colossal size, sending tremors through the very ground. Itachi, Kakashi, and the others could have sworn that they weren't imagining things. After observing for a while, they noticed that the Akatsuki member piloting the Crimson Susanoo seemed intent on containing the battle, preventing it from spreading and causing more damage to the town. He repeatedly forced the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva, who kept trying to widen the battlefield, back toward the main street. However, the white-haired youth calling himself Doma, who controlled the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva, seemed unconcerned. He recklessly swung his golden fans, launching attacks without restraint. Yet, the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva's attacks appeared ineffective against the Red Susanoo, unable to harm the Akatsuki member inside, while the Red Susanoo could damage the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva, leaving its body riddled with cracks and debris. It couldn't completely destroy it. Suddenly, Doma leaped onto the Ice Crystal Bodhisattva's shoulder, waving his golden fan. He said with a confident smirk, "How long can your lungs withstand this cold? That giant you're hiding in can't completely block out the frigid air, can it?" Inside the Susanoo, the masked Akatsuki member visibly flinched at his words, as if realizing the gravity of the situation. But after breathing in the cold air, they determined that their body felt no obvious discomfort, so, the offensive continued. Seeing this, Doma's smile slowly faded. He understood his situation all too well. His powers stemmed from the chakra he'd accumulated. Even as an upper-rank demon, he couldn't change the fact that his only way to obtain chakra was by devouring living creatures from the ninja world. His demon body couldn't naturally generate chakra, so with each passing moment of battle, his pre-existing reserves were dwindling. Even the freezing air permeating the battlefield wasn't damaging his opponent's lungs. His odds of winning this fight were looking grim. Moreover, his gaze drifted towards the nearby rooftop. A figure stood there, motionless, as if the raging battle between him and the upper-rank 2 demon held no interest. That figure was the source of his unease. At the same time, the Akatsuki member controlling the Susanoo also looked at the figure on the rooftop. In their eyes, an inexplicable fear and guilt flickered. Doma noticed this, and his mind raced with questions. Is such a powerful person actually afraid? Are they afraid of their leader? Or are they feeling guilty because they can't get rid of me? Humph, how arrogant. Doma, as an upper-rank demon, felt a surge of resentment that threatened his self-esteem as if sensing the gaze. The still figure on the distant rooftop slowly turned their head. Instantly, the Akatsuki member controlling the Susanoo trembled. Being watched by their leader made them incredibly nervous. Then, they fiercely clasped their hands together and shouted, "Ah!" A clear female voice rang out. Doma's expression twisted in disbelief. A woman. He never expected that a woman would push him, an upper-rank demon, to the brink. What surprised him even more was that, following the Akatsuki member's shout, a crimson spear materialized in the hands of the previously unarmed Susanoo. Roar! Immediately after, the red Susanoo roared, then swung the spear and plunged it into the ice crystal bodhisattva. Crack! The spear instantly pierced through the ice crystal bodhisattva's body with a resounding crack. Large chunks of ice crystals shattered under the spear's force. The once 20-meter-tall ice crystal bodhisattva, already riddled with cracks, couldn't withstand the piercing blow and collapsed into the frigid mist. As ice cubes and fragments flew everywhere, the cold air on the street intensified, reducing visibility to near zero. At both ends of the street, Kakashi immediately signaled everyone to retreat to a safer distance. Itachi and Kisame looked at the approaching wall of cold fog and leaped back. After a few bounds, they stood on a building further away. Just as both sides retreated, the figure who'd been standing quietly on the rooftop vanished without a trace. Itachi was the first to notice. With a horrified gaze, the Sharingan in his eyes scanned the battlefield. However, the dense cold fog hindered even his Sharingan, making it impossible to immediately locate the figure. Soon, Kakashi and his team also realized that the Akatsuki leader's figure was gone. Asuma asked in confusion, "Where did they go?" Shizen shook her head. "It's too cold, I can't see anything clearly." That even her summoned crows couldn't approach the heart of the battlefield. They could only hover in the sky, letting out an occasional caw. Kurenai said, "Did they enter the battlefield?" "Yeah." Kakashi nodded. Although he hadn't seen the Akatsuki leader disappear, his instincts told him that they had made their move. Aya! At that moment, a heart-wrenching scream echoed through the fog-shrouded street. Even from a distance, the sound sent shivers down their spines. What happened? Asuma was visibly nervous. Shizun and Kurenai gripped their kunai tighter. The four combatants on the battlefield were, without a doubt, at least elite Jonin level. And now, the suspected Akatsuki leader had just made a move, followed by a terrifying scream. Itachi's expression turned incredulous again, as if he'd sensed something. Kisame asked, "What is it?" Itachi slowly shook his head, remaining silent. In the fog ahead, where he couldn't see a thing, he sensed the presence of Amaterasu.